to today's lesson. It's called Roots of Democracy, and right now you should have out this guided reading that we're going to go through right now. Um, I'm not going to read every word of it, but I'm going to go through some of the finer points, and what I expect you to have ready for class tomorrow is right here in these boxes where it says sum it up, democracy is. You're going to finish that sentence, sum up what this paragraph is about, some of the important concepts. Same thing down here, consent of the governed. You're going to sum it up right here, so feel free to use that pause button and to take a few minutes after we go through each section and write a 1 or 2 sentence summary. Rule of law right here. So this is what you should be prepared to discuss in class tomorrow. Don't worry about this page. We will be working on it in class tomorrow as well. I just want you to get through page 3 of the student materials. So let's go ahead and move on to the PowerPoint. So you can just follow along, and this follows the reading material. So it says in the beginning, democracy means rule by the people, and in the United States we have a democracy. But where did it come from? There are lots of civilizations and great thinkers that influenced our founding fathers as they developed American democracy. One of these was ancient Greece. So first of all, even the word democracy comes from the Greek, meaning demos means people, and krasi, the suffix krasi, kratos, means power of. So, put that together, power of the people. That's what democracy is. You see right here, there's a picture of Athens, the Parthenon, the hill, the center of ancient Athens. And so we're going to move on to the first concept that is a root of democracy, and that is this idea of the consent of the governed. So let's talk about that. It says consent means to give permission for something. And consent of the governed means that the citizens of a country give their permission for the government to operate. This is a key feature of government in a democracy where citizens have the right to vote. So the word consent means permission, to give your permission to do something. And permission from who? From the people that are being governed. And how do we do that? Well, we do that by voting. We vote representatives into office. So every citizen has the ability to vote, but you have to keep in mind that the idea of a citizen has changed over time. If you look at just the United States, in 1800 you were considered a citizen only if you were white, male, and owned land. You could not rent and vote. By 1830 they took the land ownership requirement away, and you just had to be white and male. By 1867, after the Civil War was fought, all men could vote regardless of their race or previous servitude, as the Constitution phrases it. And finally, in 1920, women were allowed to vote. Anyone over the age of 18. Although I believe the age actually expanded. I believe it was older and has more recently gone to 18. Anyway, you see here that this idea of consent of the governed comes from ancient Athens, from the Greek tradition. In Athens, and this is the Pinks, or the National Assembly of ancient Athens. You can see right here, this was a speaker's platform where people would stand up and give speeches. And remember, in ancient Athens it was a direct democracy. Every citizen voted on every issue. So they would meet here, all the males would meet here, they would debate the ideas of the day and vote on it. And that's where this idea of consent of the governed came from. Moving on to representative government. In a representative government like we have in the United States, citizens elect representatives that make decisions for the people and are responsible to the people. Imagine if every person in the United States voted on every law that was being considered. Do you think we would ever get any laws passed? Probably not, even fewer than we get passed now. So This idea that we elect people to represent us in government dates all the way back to ancient Rome. You can see the city of Rome would be right about here. This is the boot of Italy. And ancient Rome, this little city-state right here, went on to conquer everything in red. Most of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. And at one point, Rome was actually ruled by kings, but eventually it changed into a form of democracy, where each of these areas within the empire were represented in the Roman Senate. Not every citizen was allowed to vote, and they weren't allowed to vote on all issues, but this was a form of representative democracy that our form of government takes today. The Roman Empire, the democracy was eventually overthrown, and Rome was ruled by emperors for quite some time until it fell. So these are just two pictures of what's called the Roman Forum. This was the business and government center of ancient Rome, and these are the ruins that are in the modern day city of Rome today. You can go through and tour these. These buildings are 2,000 to 3,000 years old. They're called ruins. This is the Roman Forum. This was a vacation that I went on and took some pictures at. Alright, moving on. We have this idea of the rule of law. And the rule of law means that no one is above the government, not even government officials. And in some cases, not even the king himself or the president of the United States is above the law. And this concept goes back to England, to the signing of the Magna Carta, or the Great Charter. And this is a picture of King John signing away some of his rights to the noblemen of England. What happened was King John needed some money to fight a war. He wanted to go attack France. And in order to get money from his noblemen demanded that he sign away some rights to give Englishmen property rights. In other words, the king just couldn't take their land for no reason. Rights in court, the right to face a witness, and rights regarding taxation. Englishmen now had. The king gave up by signing away the Magna Carta. And it's this idea that the king isn't allowed to do whatever he wants to do anymore. Just like the president can't do whatever they want to do. They are bound by the rule of law. We've had one president who resigned from office. We've had two that have been impeached but not removed. So even presidents are held to the rule of law. So it goes back to the Magna Carta in England. Moving on is this idea of individual rights. Individual, each person has a claim or privilege to have something for themselves. The common individual rights that we're going to discuss in the Declaration of Independence are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we're going to talk about what each of those mean. A just, fair government, a government that isn't corrupt. And this idea of people possessing individual rights dates back to John Locke, who was an English philosopher, pictured right here, Mr. Locke. He said that these rights don't come from some king, but they come from a higher power, God, if you believe. And these rights, no one could take them away, not even a king. We're going to talk more about John Locke. Actually, we have in the previous lesson. So that's this idea of individual rights. And finally, we have this this idea of checks and balances within our system of democracy here in the United States. We're going to talk much more about this concept when we study the Constitution in more detail. But what this idea means is that there are limits on the government's power. to keep the government under control. Uh, each part of the government has some control over the other part. You see here what we call the three branches of government. We're going to talk more about that as well. And in this system of checks and balances, the executive branch has some control over the legislative branch. For example, Congress, which is our legislative branch, can pass a law, but the president can veto the law if he thinks it's a bad idea, which means he can throw that bill out before it becomes a law. So it's actually not a law to begin with. And that's this idea of checks and balances, and we're going to discuss there are others as well. There are several, and we're going to become more familiar with them as the semester rolls on. So anyway, get your that's it for the presentation. Get your reading summaries filled out. Bring those to class.